Reclaim ground media, we're taking back the sound, lifting up the truth until the walls come down. Voices for the kingdom, hope in every town. This is where the lost get found. On reclaim ground.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our official hard launch of our new media company, Reclaimed Ground Media, where we're going to be discussing everything having to do with Christian values and common sense, because although common sense should be common, sometimes it's a little bit lacking. Tonight, we are going to have on all of our content creators and introduce them to you so you know exactly who you're seeing when we pop up in your feed. In addition to our content creators, we're also going to have our special guest for the night. That is going to be Newcastle County Council member from the 12th District, Kevin Caneco. And when we have Kevin on, he's going to be touching on his feud with other council member colleague, Tim Sheldon, as well as this data center and why not having safety rails is going to be a little bit troubling. Now, you guys know all about me, but I want Brian, my co-founder of Reclaim Ground Media, to tell you guys all about this wonderful company that we are starting here tonight. And keep in mind, although we are Delaware-based, we are not Delaware-bound, because Christian values and common sense stretches far and wide.
Hey, Katie, thank you so much. This is an amazing night to launch this company here. Let me just start with that this is a kingdom-led company, and we have already seen God working through this company. I would be remiss not to thank Greg Bolden, who not only gave us that amazing intro, but kind of saved us on our test run of this on Monday night.
Yes.
And I need to put this out there before I introduce Reclaim Ground Media and why we're starting it. When we started Monday night, we were on our test to see how to do this live. We were struggling for about 30 minutes. We were trying to get each other on the same page, and God works through great ways. Somebody tagged us, got Greg, who knows Katie, but I've never met him before, and he got us on this platform, and we started streaming live on something that we had never expected before. And now tonight we're able to show you all of our content creators all at once. We're able to show you some great graphics of what we're going to be able to do, and when it was more than we could imagine. So the glory goes to God. This is how this company is going to work, because it's kingdom led, and this is a company where we have seen, and I'm going to put some graphics up here so you can just see what I'm talking about, but we have seen when we interact with people, when Katie and myself and others are interacting with people in Delaware, that we have a problem here in Delaware. We have seen individuals listening to Katie and I, tens of thousands of people a day, because they want to hear true stories. They want to hear what's going on the ground level. They want to hear from you. They want to hear from listeners. They want to hear from residents about how are these decisions, not only in Dover, but in their local schools, be impacting people on the ground, and not just the leaders who are making these decisions for them. And here is the problem that we've seen, is that many of the discussions in Delaware have been run by national narratives,
Yes.
corporate filters, political spins, but the everyday Delawareans are not getting a voice and being able to tell their stories on the ground. And Katie and myself and the content creators that we're going to introduce in just a few minutes are going to get that story out there. Now, I met Katie just a few months ago. She was, probably most people know her for breaking some of the news of the Newcastle County reassessment information and what was really going on behind it. Because again, as we talk about these corporate media filters and this political spin, there was a lot of information out there, but the people were telling Katie and a lot of other people about their rising assessments, Tyler Technologies, how they were getting information from them that just didn't look like what their house looked like, or the race just didn't quite look right. And Katie was exposing that and showing that. And we connected on that because I've been allowed and very a vibrant voice in the legislature and in my personal and business life as well. So we decided that we need to get a team together that is not held by political parties, that is not held by corporations, but just wants to get the truth out there. And we have come up with this solution of Reclaim Ground Media that is viral ready multimedia studio, just like Katie and I have brought you for months, but with content creators throughout the state of Delaware, all the way from Wilmington, all the way down to Selbyville, from all different walks of life, all different, all different age groups, all different types of backgrounds, telling the stories that are actually going on here in Delaware, laser focused on Delaware communities. So not, of course, there's things on national level that are sexy, and we want to talk about them as well. But there's just as many things that impact your life more here in Delaware, and people need to know about them. And we also want to focus on better solutions. Where are we going? And learning from you all, you helping us to talk about what are solutions here in the first state. There's a lot of people blaming each other, blaming people in the past, blaming what's happening on the national stage. But how can we come together as a community and say, what do solutions in your community look like? What do solutions for your kids look like? What do solutions for your parents who are aging look like? And come together and talk about those things and interview people who actually have solutions about the challenges that we face. So we are super excited about this launch. We have had so many people reach out to us already. I've got I think 3 meetings of just people tomorrow in person that are like, hey, did you know this was going on in Delaware? And it's just amazing. There's so many stories to be shared. There's so many things to look at. And again, if we look at it through the lens that God is in charge and that he can bring us together to find solutions that are based in Christian and common sense values, then we know that we can bring something positive to the first state.
Absolutely. Your local politics affect you more than anything on a federal level ever will. And I am so thankful that I was woken up to that, especially during this reassessment process, because a lot of times I was left wondering, why are you telling me that? I have internet access. You are lying to me. I can go find this information for myself. And that's what we want to do is we want to encourage everybody over every background, over any community to go and find this information for themselves. And I think that a lot of our other content creators were left feeling the same exact way over different topics. And that's exactly why they're on board. So I'm going to start introducing to you all of our different content creators. Greg, if you could check real quick, it's not showing me as live on Facebook. I'm getting some messages. If you could make sure that's highlighted. And in the interim, in the meantime, the first person I want to introduce to you guys tonight would be Michael Smith, Pastor Mike.
It's an honor to be with you.
Hey, I just want to do a quick introduction real quick so everybody knows, can put the face to the person. So our first guest, our content creator, Michael Smith, is someone who has become a genuine voice of influence here in Delaware. Even though he insists on making one very questionable life choice, I'm talking about him being a Kansas City Chiefs fan, we won't hold that against him. We will pray for him often and hard. Michael Smith and his wife Amanda are the founding and lead pastors of True Life Church in Newark. They launched the church back in 2012 with 50 people in a movie theater, and today nearly 600 people call True Life home. They are in a powerful season of revival, transformation, and growth in their life and in their ministry. Here at Reclaimed Ground Media, Michael will step in as our faith leader, bringing depth, truth, and real-world conversations about topics that people tend to tiptoe around, but are desperately needing to hear, as we all know. Questionable football allegiance aside, he is absolutely a voice that Delaware should be tuning into. And with that, I will turn it over to Pastor Mike.
That's funny. Okay. In my defense, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. That is my hometown.
We'll let it slide. We'll let it slide.
I've got to be loyal there. I did, for what it's worth, I don't know if you guys remember when the Eagles played the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I walked out on stage in our church wearing the dog mask. Remember the dog mask that year? I would have.
Of course, the
And
underdogs, baby.
yes, yeah, Philly special, all of that. So, um, in my defense, I have been on the right side of things at times, but not ashamed of the number of trophies we've collected over the last
Oh,
few
here
years.
we go. Here we go.
Uh, so, man, I just want to say to you, Katie, to Brian, what an honor to be invited to this table, to be a part of this conversation with you guys. We moved to Delaware, and we moved to the area back in 2010 to start building a team and launch a church. And my wife and I genuinely love this place. We love these people. We left Jacksonville, Florida to be here. We are often called crazy for doing that. But we love everything about this place. We love the cities that we're close to. We love the beaches. But most of all, we love the people. What we don't love is the amount of brokenness that we experience in our community day after day after day, largely driven by the lack of policy that is built on what we would call the moral law of God. And so there's a lot of tension even in my world, in the church world right now, about what pastors should and should not say, and where they should and should not be willing to use their voices, and should we speak into politics and policy. And that's actually a relatively new phenomenon in American history. If you were to study our founding and our history, pastors spoke about public policy and were in the public square all the time. In fact, they were referred to by the British Crown as the Black Robe Regiment, because it was pastors who were leading the charge and inspiring people to go fight for freedom in the Revolutionary War. And so over the last couple years, my wife and I and our church leadership have been kind of on a journey ourselves of figuring out, man, maybe it's time to bring our voices back to this. You'll hear people say really silly things like you cannot legislate morality, but the truth is, and Brian knows this with the work that he does every day, all legislation is morality.
Yeah.
So the question is, whose morality do we not want legislated? And I'm for morality that comes from heaven, from Jesus. We think history has proven that leads to human flourishing time and time again. And so when you guys came and asked us if we would want to lend our voices to this movement to try to push back on some of the brokenness, the emptiness, and the darkness that we all are experiencing day after day in our region, it didn't take long at all to say yes. And so thank you guys for the invitation. It's really an honor to have a seat at the table with you.
We're so happy to have you, and we're so excited to partake in a lot of the conversations we'll be having. I know I was telling this to Brian the other day, but I'm somebody who says that they live their life in Christ, for Christ, of Christ. And I do, but there's still things that I'm unsure of, and there's still things that I need to kind of know to navigate the waters, and I'm always growing as well. So it doesn't matter where I am, you always have things to learn. You always have conversations to have. You always have perspective to gain. And I personally can say, especially in the realm of parenting, I am so happy to have an opportunity to have these conversations with somebody that knows the word a little bit better than I do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate it. And we are so thankful to have you. I know the pastor is going to kick off with some of his inside of his church are going to have a marriage series. And, my wife and I have been married for 11 years now. And I will tell you, it's a good marriage a great marriage has its ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and leaning in not only on the mountain, but also in the valleys is really where I think that your marriage series is going to be able to go to help people no matter where they are in that marriage, year 1, year 5, year 25, and be able for them to lean in. So I'm really excited to see that on this network as well as in your church at Newark.
Yes.
Right.
And it's not just us old married folks that can learn a lot from Michael. Also, Pastor Mike is great talking to us and guiding us, but he can speak to people of all generations. And we want to make sure that people of all generations, all backgrounds are heard and their voices are heard, which is exactly why we made sure that we needed to go out and we needed to find somebody that had a little bit of a different perspective than Brian and I, because we want to make sure all perspectives are covered. So that brings me right into our next content creator that I'm so glad to have on this platform. I'm so excited to see the journey of, and that would be Kevin O'Brien.
It's awesome to be here. How are you guys?
So excited to have you on here tonight. Love
Doing
your
pretty.
background, Kevin.
Thank you. Felt appropriate.
It was very appropriate. I just want to do a quick introduction to you real quick so everybody knows who you are.
Go ahead.
Next up is someone who represents a voice we do not hear nearly enough from, the Gen Z perspective. And trust me, he's not just here to fill a demographic. He's here because he has a lot of very, very important things to say. Kevin O'Brien is a 22-year-old from Newark, Delaware, and he's stepping into reclaimed ground media as our Gen Z voice of reason and sometimes rebellion, which is completely okay here. We actually encourage that. Kevin brings a raw, honest perspective on what it actually feels like to be a young adult in Delaware right now. He's ready to talk about the Second Amendment from a generation that grew up surrounded by debates, lockdown drills, and political noise. He's going to dig into the job market young people are navigating or struggling to navigate. He'll break down the shifting social environment within his generation, the anxiety of trying to afford a place to live, and the laws being passed in Delaware that make many young people feel like the society around them is becoming less safe, not more. He's bold, he's unfiltered, and he's speaking for an entire generation that's tired of being spoken about instead of spoken to. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin.
Yeah, going to the being spoken about and not to. I feel that the Gen Z is underlooked and we're questioned.
Mm-hmm.
But me specifically, when I'm questioned, I feel insulted.
Yeah.
But it's the mentality of being 22. Everyone imagined like just go party, do what you want. I don't have that thrill. I work, I get what I want, I do it, do what I can to essentially be a better me. And when politicians are not talking to the young generation, the future voters, the ones that actually live life during this mayhem that is Delaware, even though it's not controlled mayhem, but it's small state.
Yeah.
No one talks.
No one talks, and that's what's so important. To have any type of change or any type of common ground, you have to have dialogue, you have to have conversation. And
Yep.
I do think this is something that a lot of people are starting to become in tune with. I do know that there is currently a coalition being formed to reach out to youth through Daniel Willis, who is one of the political voices here in the state, and he is teaming up with Garrett Weldon to do this. And I think it's a really important mission because your voices matter too. And what had affected us, old people, as I call Brian and I, back in the day when we were, in our early 20s, doesn't affect you guys the same. I was in my early 20s during the 2008 housing market crash. I was able to buy my home for $100,000. That's not doable for you guys. And realistically, people from your generation, unless you come from money, are probably never going to own a home in the state of Delaware. If you look at our current housing market, most homes on the market right now are $450,000 or more. And I think it's very important for your generation to have a society and have a community to truly call and feel as home. We have to change that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And like to add to that, having to go over the Delaware Memorial Bridge every day to go to work, to try and save for a house.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So Delaware is small. There's no sales tax. So I can understand. Sorry, let me start over. Delaware it's small. There's very little room for growth. And the growth that is happening in New York City, for example, the massive buildings, the massive population, there's more people in New York City than there is in the entire state of Delaware.
Yeah.
So if we're going to keep building the way we are, we've lost 260 acres of farmland in the past 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's just farmland. That's not including the forest areas that were destroyed and built up upon.
Yeah.
And there's more houses than there are jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a really good important point that we have to continue growing in this state for residents, not just for business owners.
Exactly.
And if we have, Greg, do we have Shannon Tiberi on yet? Because I can't think of a more perfect segue than what Brian just said to bring on Shannon. There she is, to talk about exactly that, because Delaware has had a tendency to grow for businesses and not residents, and we need to change that. Quick little introduction to Shannon, who most of you guys already know for being absolute firecracker here on social media, breaking down those numbers for us, but to get to know her just a little bit better. Shannon Tiberi has become essential to what we're building here at Reclaimed Ground Media, our liaison, our researcher, and our in-house watchdog for all things Delaware finance and spending. Shannon Tiberi is a lifelong Middletown resident, a mom of 5, and somehow she still manages to know the Delaware checkbook as well as she knows her own kids. Shannon brings 18 years of experience in consumer finance, along with a background as a former news reporter, which means she not only finds the information, but she knows exactly the right way to convey it so it makes sense. She has thrown herself headfirst into Delaware politics, especially when it comes to the Appoquinimink School District, where she is absolutely determined to bring transparency, accountability, and a little bit of sunlight to something that has become quite dark if you're a parent. Shannon is sharp, she's fearless, and the perfect person to connect the dots between state spending, local decisions, and the real families that feel the impact. Shannon Tiberi.
Hey guys. So excited to be here. This is something I know Katie and Brian are very passionate about. They've been working on for a little bit here, and it's been really fun to kind of sit and watch and see it all come together to be here. And I feel so official because I figured out how to do this while I was in the waiting room. So this is our Delaware budget, actually. So you can't get any more to the source than the actual DFAC, the Delaware Economic Financial Advisory Committee budget sheet. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. They had asked me to do, the Delaware dollar, looking at spending and finance. Katie gave a wonderful introduction. I made a video once referring to it as whack-a-mole. So when enough people start caring, obviously earlier in the year we had energy bills, we saw sewer bills, we saw all of our bills go up, the tax bills. So I think once enough people start catching on, then it's, people start asking why are we here? Why are we in this boat? Do we really have a $400 million revenue budget crisis? World is sky is falling. And I think hopefully reclaiming ground for me is reclaiming ground of sanity and understanding the why of why we're here, what's really happening, not just the talking points that are a lot of people are getting paid a lot of money to just rehash over and over again on the hour. It's really digging into the nitty gritty. It's having the uncomfortable conversations. We get challenged a lot. You guys see it, I'm sure, in our comments and things. And it's exciting to me because it's an opportunity, one, to get a different perspective, because I'm not a builder. So when it comes to data centers, I want the perspective of the building trades and understanding how this affects them just as much as I want the residents, feedback. When we talk about spending and grants and things like that, it's not a witch hunt. It's not looking to say, hey, who's doing something wrong. It's really just a matter of understanding, again, the why of how we got here. So for me, just again, sticking to the basics, the 1, 2, 3s, and keeping an open mind, and hopefully just keeping everybody curious.
I don't want to speak for Shannon either, but I feel like another thing that's been quite fun for us and those others in our group chat is not just digging into the finances, but kind of connecting the dots between everything that's going out, the grants that go out, the people that are connected to those grants, the people that are friends with the people that are getting the grants, and all these lines. And have you ever seen that episode of, what show is that? Is it The Office, maybe, with the board and all the strings in the background connecting everything? I mean, I just want to ask that everybody pray for our husbands, because the past couple months, poor Daniel and Joel have been probably missing us a little bit more than they care to admit. But we have really been onto some things that I am personally so excited to have conversations like this with Shannon about. and just shed the light on some things. You guys obviously like that. You like learning. And good Lord, the things that have been done in the dark for so long that people just never knew about.
And Shannon, we are so excited to have you on board because there is not enough people digging into the numbers. And maybe sometimes it's because they don't understand the numbers. Maybe sometimes it's because it's very overwhelming to look at that much data. Maybe sometimes it's because they just don't want to know what's behind that data.
Believe in institutions. I think we find that where it's, let's throw more money, let's litigate, let's do all these things and not address the root cause. And so this isn't, I want to be very clear, this isn't about taking resources away or, defunding things. This is making sure funding is going to where it needs to go. We have people that genuinely need help in this state, and they're scared, and we're going into winter. And we need to really be accountable to our promises, not just during campaign season.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely true. And all of the people that got hit hard by the rise in taxes, the the increases in electric rates, they need to see what's going on with these numbers because they are all, as Katie said, they're all intertwined and they all pull on each other. All the numbers in the budget pull on each other. And there's only a set amount of Delaware dollars, as you put it, that is there. And so we are so excited to have you on board so people can understand the finances better that are being decided here in the first state.
Absolutely. And Shannon said something so important. I thought about getting to the root cause. So here we promise you that even if it takes a while, even if we don't do it right away, we're going to get to the root cause of these things. We're not just going to say we have a $400 million deficit and then blame it on a federal taxing and think a decoupling bill will solve it. So here we promise to dig a little bit deeper and get to the bottom of all of that.
Absolutely.
And as we do, and as you learn some of the things that have been happening here in Delaware, it's going to be important to lean back on your Christian values and pray that things get better and find a different way, no matter what generation you're from. And that brings me to our next content creator, which I'm so happy to have on here, who is responsible for our amazing intro. If we could bring up Isaiah Lee.
How you doing?
Hey, Isaiah.
Hello.
All right, Isaiah is somebody with talent, purpose, and fire you feel the moment he steps into a room. Isaiah Lee started with nothing but a vision to inspire, to uplift, and to create with intention. And today he's not just a creator and an entrepreneur, he is a driving force behind Faithful to the Vision, a movement turning ideas into impact and faith into real, meaningful action. Isaiah is an up-and-coming Christian rap artist right here in our own backyard, dropping verses packed with double entendres that hit your mind and your spirit at the same time. His music leaves you thinking, reflecting, and honestly a little on fire for the word. Isaiah doesn't just stop there. By day, he works in our public schools as a paraprofessional, and by heart, he's committed to reaching young people on a spiritual level far beyond the classroom. He's here to build bridges, to shift perspectives, and to remind this generation that faith and creativity can walk hand in hand. Isaiah Lee.
How you doing?
Isaiah, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us why you feel so called to reclaim ground here in Delaware and what you want our movement for.
Okay, I'm 35 years old, but I called to reclaim ground. It's not just in Delaware, but anywhere. Coming from a small city, originally Chester, Pennsylvania, but I've been here since 2002. I've seen a lot, my friends losing their lives and a lot of different things. And I feel that a lot of people aren't faithful to the vision. There's a lot of visions that we have, and we just don't stay faithful to it because of our surroundings and what we see. And I believe that just outside of the music, but the lifestyle that I live, how I'm getting closer to Christ and building relationships with him and other people, I believe that can help others as well. That's pretty much it there. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I want to say that I'm so happy to be a part of your journey as you're about to release your new EP as well. I cannot wait to listen to that. As somebody myself that relates to that kind of music, I really enjoy rap and hip hop, and I was very immersed in all of that music. That's all that would be on in my cars. And just having kids really changes and shifts something in you where you listen to the words a little bit differently and you listen to the messaging and what they're talking about just a little bit differently. So as I stepped away for secular music a little while back, because if I don't want my kids hearing that, I shouldn't be putting that in my ears either. I shouldn't be absorbing that. It's so nice to find such a talented person, just a bonus that you're right here in Delaware with us, that can speak and really give us hard-hitting music with a better message, with a message that is of Christ, and a message that really, I mean, I meant what I say in that intro. It makes you on fire for the word. It resonates and you can feel it moving you.
Definitely. That's mainly how I look at it, because even me being a Christian artist, sometimes that's a tough title because it's just in a box, and I'm like, I am a Christian, but for me, I kind of prefer like a kingdom artist, and I want my fruits to show, because I understand, we do Christian hip hop, certain hip hop, but be honest, not everybody that says it is that, and I don't want to come off as, I guess like twisting it. So I want to just be honest and say, hey, look, I mess up too, but my fruits are getting better. The Lord is changing my life. Even with, like I said, I'm not too much into politics, but just seeing certain things. I believe that even with these politics, we just have to sit back, like you said, take a step back within our Christian values and just sit back and say, okay, Lord, what do you want us to see? What is your idea in the kingdom? How do you want us to look at things? How do you want us to serve these people? Because even we all might have different political views, but it's also about service. Like, okay, now just being honest, like, there's some Democrats, some Republicans. I don't know too much about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, okay, either way, how are we going to love them like Jesus, despite us having different,
Yes.
political parties?
Yes, absolutely. Because you can disagree with somebody if you do disagree, but you can do it in a respectful way that does still glorify God, and you can still open up those conversations that could lead somebody to the path that we found ourselves on ourselves. And I think that's one thing that I really enjoy about your music is it doesn't just reach believers, it reaches non-believers too.
Yes.
And it can open that door for somebody that's not a believer to be listening to your music, but as they repeat it more and more, and as they hear it, it can relate into something else. And
Yes.
I can listen to your music and just think it's great music, but me being a believer, I know exactly what you're talking about. So I
Yes.
love that you open up that door and you leave it open for people to find their own way by just planting seeds and messaging that's so positive and is so needed.
Yep. I actually, before I got close to Christ, I was doing it, I guess, in the motivational music, but it was more so like me. Like, how when, come in hip hop, it's me, me, me.
Yeah.
And the Lord was like, okay, yeah, don't do that. And then he stripped me of it. And I was just going to be a paraprofessional and just, work in the school system. But the Lord was like, you're going to do that and do music for me. And what I realized is when I read the Bible, Jesus spoke in parables. It's kind of like, if you know, you know. And in hip hop, it's usually metaphors. Like if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But I kind of want to look at it as a parable. So it's like, okay, if I say there was a line that I said, in one of my songs, I said, Jesus, basically I said, Jesus had 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now you have your 5 loaves and 2 fish, something along those lines. Now, if you're a believer, you know that 5 loaves and 2 fish was when he fed the 5,000.
Mhm.
But in the average world, you can use your own 5 loaves and 2 fish. What are you good at? What can you do to help and share and serve others? And I think that's why this podcast is needed, because we're all using our 5 loaves and 2 fish to share, to change people's lives, to get people to understand what politics are, like you said, with common sense. It's not just, okay, we're up here talking about politics and what goes on in the world in Delaware. We're talking about, how does the kingdom work? How would he, if Jesus was here right now, how would he fix all of these politics? How would he do certain things? Or would he be involved in it? Or he's like, hey, look, I'm the way, the truth, and the light. So come to me,
Yeah.
and everything else will be together. So
Absolutely. That was such a wonderful way to say that. I mean, I can't even follow it up with anything. That was absolutely fabulous. What would he say? And that's exactly why we have this. It's not just about politics. It's the root of everything. It's your morality and your principles that make you a better parent, that make you a better community member, that make you a more informed person altogether. And it's so important to get through on all of that. And maybe even sometimes make you a better county council member. So we are so excited tonight, especially on the heels of that last meeting, to welcome county council member from the 12th district, Kevin Caneco.
Hey, Katie. Hey, council, the representative. See, I'm used to calling people councilmen. So
No worries, man. No worries.
Good luck to you, Representative Troop, and thank you, Katie. It's good to be here.
We're really, really happy to have you. I just want to do a brief introduction for those who do not know you, but will soon know you very well, I'm sure. Okay, so Kevin has quickly become one of the most entertaining and effective news voices in Delaware politics. He is the District 12 Newcastle County Council representative elected just last year, and he's already making waves. Kevin Caneco's story is one worth telling. He served our country on active duty in the U.S. Army. He continued his service in the National Guard. He went on to law school and is now a practicing attorney and a councilman. And somehow, despite actually having a real day job, which is something that a lot of our elected officials don't have, he still finds plenty of time to moonlight as a professional thorn in the side for his council colleague, Tim Sheldon. Kevin is also very patiently, awaiting the opportunity to defeat State Representative Mike Smith in anything even remotely physical. Basketball, obstacle course, rock, paper, scissors, anything that lets him officially crown himself superior to Mike. But jokes aside, Kevin is here tonight because he has been one of the very few elected officials willing to speak openly about the real issues surrounding energy use, the complete lack of meaningful regulation for the data centers, and the uncomfortable truth about the non-existent long-term job creations that these corporations keep promising Delawareans. He brings honesty, he brings backbone, and he brings the receipts. Please, everybody, welcome Kevin Caneco.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Katie. Listen, like I said, I'm willing to, we had had this conversation, I'm willing to sit down with anybody, right? I mean, I don't care about political parties. I really don't. I care about who you want to represent, who you want to talk to, and if you want to get things done. And so, again, as I told people the other night in county council, you know, I used to sit around a smoke pit in Newcastle back when I was in Afghanistan, and you know, you could have any decision you wanted about what you thought about politics, but everybody had an American flag on that side. So we need to get together and have a way to move forward.
Yeah, Kevin, we really appreciate you being here tonight and talking about some of the things going on in Newcastle County, because it does affect all of us here in Delaware. I know that people throughout the state many times want to say, well, that's down in Sussex County or that's up in Newcastle County, but we're such a small state that it really does impact all of us. And I think Katie, we have not had the opportunity to really meet in person and have a long discussion, but it sounds like Katie already has you down to a T, especially about wanting to beat Mike Smith in anything physical. And he sits right behind me on the legislative hall floor, and he's always trying to challenge everybody in the same way too, man. He loves it. He loves competition, and I love people like that. It's so much fun. But we wanted to jump right into the data center and talk a lot about this, because people are, you know, and you know just as well as I do, no matter how much you put information out into the public, no matter how many times you live stream a meeting, people just don't know the information about what's going on. So we wanted to, first of all, let us know where we are with the data center. What point of the journey is the data center? Where did it start, and what point are we at right now?
Well, let's be very clear about a few things. First of all, this is going to be one of the biggest data centers ever built on the East Coast of the entire United States. This data center right now, under our UDC, Uniform Development Code, which is part of Newcastle County Code, does not really regulate this, because we never understood these types of huge investment projects that would be. We're talking about 6 million square foot. I mean, we're talking about 1.2 gigawatts of what they want to take right now. And they have not committed to us to not use their own energy.
Yes.
So if your Delmarva power bill goes up $400 to $600 after a couple of years of them building this, you know why? It's because they built that data center. They're trying to suck monstrous amounts of water out of the Delaware River. There are other things they're trying to do, and we have to make sure we put these regulations on right now.
So where do we stand? Was there ever a need for a change of zone, or are they already in the right zoning, or is there a way for the council to just say, no, we don't want this? Where legally does the council and the business stand at this point?
No, it's a fair question. So what happens is Councilwoman Kilpatrick tried to kill this bill with Councilman Sheldon, and essentially tried to kill the bill, and then brought a bunch of hostile amendments on the floor on Tuesday. And then we gathered together with a few other folks to say, okay, well, let's table this, because we're not going to have these amendments that basically gut the entire legislation. So right now we tabled it. We're waiting for 2 more weeks. We're working it out. We're talking to a few people, but listen, I'm open to having conversations with everyone, but you're not going to back me down and having these reasonable regulations. I don't think data centers should be in someone's backyard. I don't think that noise regulations should not be monitored. These are important things we got to get done.
So it sounds, through the news, through reading Delaware Press, it sounds like this is, even though there may be regulations, this is already kind of a done deal. Is that true? Or is there a way, if residents and the council say, no, we don't want it, that this thing could not show up in Delaware? And what would be in your view, the positives and the negatives for it not being here?
Well, it's complicated because there's 2 parcels that they want, right? The northern one has to go through a rezoning, which has to go through me, and has to go through county council. The southern one, right now, under legislation, is by right, which basically says their zoning, they can put a data center on there. Okay. And that's part of the reason we're trying to change the ordinance and try to change the law to make sure this stuff doesn't happen, because we're not used to people just putting on data centers on random lots like that. So right now, I'll be honest with you, we're in a tough position on that southern parcel right now, but I'm working on everything I could do to have retroactive language applied to it. But the majority of council, and I don't know why. Maybe we can get in that in a few questions, but they wanted that language out, and that language did come out.
Now, let's pull on that thread a little bit, because I remember at Legislative Hall there was retroactive activity to go against the wishes of Sussex County residents and Sussex County Council to actually go retroactively for a specific piece of property put the engineering in for that wind farm down there, and that went through the state of Delaware. That went through the legislature. So what do you think, in your opinion? What is the pool there? What is that piece for the retroactivity that they're not comfortable with or don't want to lean into?
Well, we already said the pending ordinance doctrine. Anybody can look it up. It's a Rehoboth Beach case back in 2022. Is good ordinance. It's good law in the state of Delaware. And I'm being honest with you, Brian. I'm being honest with you, Katie. There are these certain special business interests that just want to push this over the line and want to bully themselves. They want to bully it. I'm telling you, they want to bully themselves into passing this legislation. And we have looked it up, and I said, I will absolutely, at this point, vote against the legislation if it comes to this, and they can sue the county. I think we're good. We can put retroactive legislation that says it applies to this. But they have hired a lot of high-paid attorneys to kind of push things through, and I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned we might get railroaded here, and I don't know how. Moving forward, I'm going to do everything I can, but I think we're getting railroaded at this point.
So it sounds like to me, I mean, I face this all the time as well. There's these interests, and it's not always, one side or the other of, a political affiliation, but it just seems to come from whoever's got that special interest in this certain project. And it sounds like you're somebody who really is going after what the people want. Where are these special interests coming from, and what do they want?
Let's be honest. It's a bunch of land use attorneys who want to make money. Okay. And then there's only a small bar of them in Delaware. And I'll be honest with you, they donate to politicians in this state, and they listen to them very closely, and it's just not right. And we need more politicians that stand up and say, That's not okay. That's not okay. What
Yeah.
you're doing and having these meetings are not okay. And unfortunately, these land use attorneys keep pushing these developments through. They keep pushing all these things through. And it's just, I don't know. We need to do something to kind of, like you said, I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, sit down and fight this, right? And push back on this. And be a person that believes in what we do, which is people power, right? And I don't, and just the common person that I've knocked on the door, they don't care if I'm a Republican or a Democrat. They really don't. They say, Kevin, I like you because you're fighting for, I know what you're fighting for. You're fighting against those tough people up in Wilmington that fight back all the time and all those special interests. And they don't care. Republican, Democrat, independent, whatever. We have to get to a place where we're fighting for people, and just these interests in Dover need to be defeated.
Yeah. Now I've got to ask you a question. Is this the reason, or is there more reasons why you think that you're getting a lot of pushback? I don't know, Katie, if you wanted to talk about this, about the pushback that he saw, that Kevin saw the other night. But we've got, what's his name? Tim Sheldon, Councilman Tim Sheldon, the other night. We'd be remiss if we didn't bring this up. I think he's telling you that you're number one. I believe that's what that is right there. But he stood up when you said something about special, having people actually talk during the council committee, and he either thinks you're number one or is trying to tell you something else. And is this the reason, or is there more going on there? And I think that people kind of want to know, if this guy is fighting for the right reasons, what is the tension that we're seeing there?
Well, it's embarrassing by Tim Sheldon. I mean, it's embarrassing. Let's all call it like it is. And you know what? And Katie knows this too. You can make public comment, and Brian, you know this too, in Dover or in county council. That is your right as an American. It's your First Amendment right. I don't care. You would come into council and say, Kevin Caneco I don't like him for this, this, and this. And I would sit there and go, okay, that's what I signed up for when I ran for office.
Yeah.
And then there was a woman speaking, and Tim was going, and he was laughing and joking with Janet Kilpatrick and being like, she doesn't know what she's talking about, blah, blah. And I said, you're out of order. You're out of order. Let the public speak. And then he decided to say, basically, get up, give me the middle finger, and walk out. I mean, how deplorable is that? I mean, that is just so unprofessional. So, I mean, but this is sometimes, and Brian, you probably know this too, we have to deal with some of these people. And it's sad. I mean, it's sad. And that's why I want more young people, to be honest, to run for office.
Absolutely.
More people in our generation who are in their 20s, 30s, early, 40s, just go run, go give it a go. Because some of these folks think that they talk down to me. I mean, they're tough. And
if I could run it back for a second, actually, Kevin, what put me on your radar, or put you on my radar, I guess I should say. And the original reason I reached out to you is because after watching back in August at the reassessment time, when the special sessions were occurring over that, I saw the way that you were different from almost everybody else in council, because as people were making comments about the reassessment audit and voicing their concerns and their desire to have it done, those people were mocked. And it took a lot for those people to get up there and say what they did. And I know that because it took a lot for me to start pushing back right here in Delaware. It was one thing for me to get on TikTok and talk about things on a national scale, and I had an audience on a national level, but it's another thing when it's people right in your own backyard that you're talking about and you're talking to, because the reception is met differently. And I saw people at that meeting get up there that were so nervous and so uncomfortable and were so out of their comfort zones, had never done anything like that before, and were so brave to do it. And they were in that room, and they sat in that room, and they mocked those people, and they laughed at their concerns. And the way they treated them were just so disgusting, but you were different. You didn't do that. In fact, you stuck up for them in that meeting too, as you did right here recently. And I think that is so important to have somebody up there, because it's not just that you're online and you're saying the right things and at your speeches at Newcastle County Council. It's not that you're just saying the right things, you're walking the right walk and you're doing exactly what we want you to do. And I'm personally in your district, and you made me so proud to be one of your constituents and know that we elected the right person here, because you were one of the few people up there fighting for us.
No, I appreciate that. It's very, very kind words. And listen, and that's what at the end of the day, it's what it's about, right? It's standing up for the people that are in our district. And again, I don't care your political party, I don't care your association. There's a lot of work we have to do in the state of Delaware, because the old Delaware way is not working. And
You're absolutely right.
it is just not working. And I'm telling you, I think this new generation of people that we're connecting with, and I'm telling you, it's Democrats, it's Republicans, it's independents, there's a whole new coalition here of people who are just tired with the old way of doing things. And I appreciate, you guys really, pushing hard and doing that hard work.
Well,
at the end of the day, we want change. At the end of the day, we want better community for our kids to grow up in and live in and call home. And I know you're a father yourself, so you can probably feel that exact sentiment. It's so important that no matter what side you're on, no matter who you're voting for at the end of the day, no matter whose values most closely align with yours, we have in office what we have in office. And it's important to support people when they're doing the right thing. So I do, a lot of times my base is obviously a little bit more conservative. I'm a former independent that began voting conservatively as I kind of came on to politics in general and kind of understood the different ways. But I've caught a lot of flack for defending you. I'm happy to do so. People will comment about you being a Democrat, and listen, at the end of the day, I want you to do a great job. At the end of the day, you're who I have, you're my representative, and I am cheering for you and encouraging you. And it's important to have those conversations where you're reaching out across the aisle to find a common ground, which is exactly what we're trying to do at Reclaim Ground. We're trying to reclaim ground for common sense.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Kevin, tell me probably the last questions I would think that people, unless you have some as well, Katie, is what are your major concerns with the data center, and what do you want to see as the next step for the process here? As it's tabled now, but what do you want to see as the next step?
Well, it's tabled now, but if you live in Newcastle County, and I'm sorry if you live in Kent or Sussex, because but if you live in Newcastle County, contact your local county council person. And by the way, if you do live in Kent or Sussex, you can still contact those Newcastle County council members and say, I don't think this project is right yet, right? Because what they're trying to do is kill an ordinance that would put those regulations on there. So you need to contact your local Newcastle County council members and talk about that. You have to talk about what the energy costs would be, because they have not proved to us that your Delmarva power bill won't go up by $500 to $600 if we put this in place. They haven't talked about how much water they want to take from the Delaware River and Bay. Okay. They have not talked to us about the wetlands around Delaware City and how that might affect them. They haven't talked to us about that noise level that I told you has residual effects that they've been studying as they build these with brain cancer rates, because they're low noise level activities. They have to answer these questions. So I would ask you to reach out to your county council member. If you don't live in Newcastle County, then fine, but reach out to them, because they need to understand that we're dealing with something very, very important. This is a mega project, not just.
I have a couple really questions that I personally am really excited for you to hopefully be able to shed some light on an answer, because I am in this district. I'm not too far from where this data center would go up. And one of the things when the data center was put on my radar in general, I like to investigate things when people ask me to cover them. I never want to talk about something I don't know about. I'm never going to know about it entirely, but I'd like to have a little bit of a background. And when we talk about this data center, I know you pressed on the fact this would be the biggest in the country. I believe when I was looking it up earlier with Brian, it's the equivalent to about 113 football fields. So if you're not familiar with how big this data center would be, about 113 football fields. It's about, I think it was what, Brian, 15 Costco's. So if you're a woman watching, hi, hello, you know what Costco's like. It's about 15 of those. It's huge, and there's nothing to compare it to. But if you do look at data centers going up across the country, much smaller than this, in residential areas specifically, there is a trend with market value for the homes in the area after these data centers go up. And I feel like that is one thing that has not been touched on at all, not just living with the data center, but trying to move out with the data center there. This will drastically tank home values in that area.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, Katie. And there are, obviously, developments around this area that they are proposing right now. And we have looked at studies from the National Association of Counties, which I'm always in contact with, which do say that when you build a huge data center around a couple suburban developments, people are less likely to buy a home in there because of the concerns they have from what these data centers do and what they produce. So you're 100% right that I do think it brings home values down when they build these data centers around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I don't really understand is, let's go under the notion, let's hypothetically say, no matter what, the data center is going there, right? I don't quite understand the pushback for the safety guards. You're getting the data center. If we could bring up real quick, Greg, the photo we have, I believe it's loaded, of two gentlemen with a sign from earlier this week. I don't know if that's loaded in the queue to bring up. But one of the major pushbacks that I've seen, that after looking into it, I don't really find it to be too founded, is that people are equating you pushing for safety rails on this project to losing jobs. How does that make sense?
It doesn't make sense. And I have had multiple conversations with
there it is. We have it up here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but this photo right here, this is two gentlemen protesting Councilman Kevin Caneco. Tell him to stop killing good, high-paying jobs.
Dude, you get more love than I do. This is great. I thought I was the only one.
So like, again, this is what I have to deal with, right? When somebody stands up and says to the Building Trades Council, to whatever, like, you're not just pushing this through. I'm gonna check in on this, and we're gonna look at regulations. This is what happens, right? They try to bully you. They try to, I've been approached in council by, we already know the Tim Sheldon way, right? But then I have people on the side of my road putting my personal cell phone out there. Yes. I mean, it's just, it's pettiness, and it's ridiculous. And here's the deal, Katie, and here's the deal, Brian. It's not a job killer at all. I said, we're just trying to make sure all those regulations are in place. People, if they were going to build it, would have the jobs either way. If they don't, then we would work on it. And I've been saying I would work with building trades on getting labor to do that. But, they just don't get me started on them.
Yeah, I want to get you started, because I've been started. I don't get it. It's something that just seems like common sense. If the data center is going up, the trades are going to have their jobs. The electricians are going to have their jobs. Bricklayers are going to have their jobs. Construction, they're going to have their jobs. That's not going anywhere. If anything, I think it's an argument that if we put the safety rails in place and we put more guards in this data center, it could arguably create more jobs. There's more work to be done.
You're right. There's absolutely more work to be done. And actually, we've studied that. We've looked into that. And the matter of the fact is, at the end of the day, again, if we have this project labor agreement in place, we're good to do that. But, how many jobs are long-term within the data center also are being overinflated? I mean, so we don't know what that number is yet.
It's being overinflated quite a bit. I took it upon myself to look at, I'm going to call it propaganda, because that's what I believe it is, that Starwood's personally putting out about Project Washington, where I believe, if my notes are correct, they have estimated 1,500 to 2,000 permanent jobs. And I understand this is going to be way bigger of a data center than we have anything to compare it to. But if you look at the closest comparable sized data center in the country that employs 25 to 50 permanent jobs. So even if we're saying that this data center, let's say, is 4 times the size of that, those numbers don't add up. There's a discrepancy there.
There is. And listen, I've heard from, I mean, even at this project, like I said, less than 200 permanent jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, some of those are just contractual jobs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you hire 20, 15 people to go in and like sweep the floors and do all that stuff. Because I mean, all these buildings are is a bunch of computers, like these massive systems. And you only need a couple people to kind of look after them. So they're not job producers long term.
Yeah, no, they're not at all. I don't. The entire thing just kind of boggles my mind a little bit. I mean, I obviously have the concerns about the data center going there to begin with. I've dug in recently a lot about the energy costs here with Delmarva. This puts unnecessary and unneeded strain on the PJM grid, which I feel like a lot of people aren't really willing to look long term at what the effects of that will be. But one thing that I personally have had in my mind, and when things like this are proposed, I immediately think of just being on the tax reassessment entirety, is another thing that seemed a little bit inflated by Starwood was the tax revenue it would bring in. Because if anything with this tax reassessment has shown us, big businesses and corporations that have the ability to make these deals, these sweetheart deals, which by the way is something historically made with every data center that has gone up in the country, we're not going to be bringing in that much tax money because they're going to get massive tax breaks. We've seen this.
That's true. And also the propaganda they've been putting out about how much tax money they'll bring in is incorrect. Because as we learned from reassessment, like Amazon, they don't get taxed at how much money they make. They get taxed on basically what essentially is the property value there, right? At the Boxwood property, you know? And so they're putting out, they're going to bring in $55 million to Newcastle County. I'm sorry to say this. It's a complete lie. It's a complete lie. I don't know if whoever from their public relations department didn't do their homework, but they basically, I don't know, they did a tax projection from other states, but in Delaware, they're not getting $55 million. It's complete nonsense.
This is one of those instances where I look at these lawmakers telling us this stuff and just kind of towing the line and reiterating this stuff. And I'm like, we have the internet. Why are you lying? We can look this information up. We can see, if we can do basic math, we can see where this is going. And it's not going to be any of these things promised.
No, that's the exact thing. And like Katie, as soon as they put that out on their texting, because they have this big PR firm, they're texting all these people. And as soon as we got that information, we looked it up. It took us 2 to 2.5 hours to basically say, oh, wow, this is just a complete lie. It's just a complete lie. And by the way, shout out to Shannon Tiberi, who is also on top of that. And, you know, these people, you know, like you said, like, it's not 1984 anymore. We have the internet. Like, we can look this stuff up and we can research stuff and stop coming out to us and lying. Just stop lying.
Stop lying. Greg, could we bring up Shannon for a minute, actually? Because as Kevin just mentioned, Shannon, welcome back. Can you tell us a little bit about the stuff that you've been uncovering with this? Because this stuff people need to know.
Had told me because I think Carter had posted about it being tabled, and then the radar group, shout out to them if they're watching. They've been watchdogs with the data center and sharing a lot more information than I could even begin to comprehend. But it's been fascinating. I actually was privy. I found some old archive chats from Carter and going back in time, and just as you put the timeline together, like Kevin said, it's just, this isn't just one person. This is a culture that's been manifested for a long period of time of the expectation that we're not going to pay attention. And when you have parents that are working 2 and 3 jobs, they can't keep up with their kid. Like, who can pay attention right now? There's so much to the whack-a-mole thing again. But as far as the data center, you know, it's tough because you have the same people behind the Port of Wilmington that you have behind the data center. You have the same people that push Fisker that are behind the Port of Wilmington and the data center. So when you see the trends and you see the same people connected to the same things, it gets hard because we want jobs. We want these great things that they promise our economy and all. Matt Myers in August said it's an economic charge for us, but we want reality too. And we don't want these grand promises that aren't going to come to fruition, because what happens, we all get divided and you have a bunch of people fighting over something that is all done behind closed doors anyway. I made a video about the land use process, and Kevin, I think that was kind of inspired after the last time when it was proposed and everybody said, this is nonsense legislation. This doesn't. So I wanted to understand, how much time does it really take for a land use process to go through, and just understanding, how many years are in between and extensions and things like that. It really makes you wonder, like, how quick some of these things get pushed through. And then I mentioned in my video about the 87 rezonings, and Kevin, I think what many people don't know is on the council meeting the other night, I can't remember the count off the top of my head, but a lot of ordinances were pushed through to change zonings on that meeting the other night. And those were part of that 87 that they wanted to push through. So they're piecing them out little bit by little bit. And so I think we need to look at that. I think there's a lot of things we need to look at, but ultimately I think it's just letting them know that we're looking at it.
Shannon, one other thing that I want to, while we have you here, Kevin had mentioned earlier about kind of who's benefiting from this, right? And one of the things he mentioned was land use attorneys. And Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, but your good friend over in Appoquinimink, I believe, is one of them. Can you tell us about that?
I don't have my shark onesie. So yeah, and it's funny because it kind of is a unique opportunity, because I've said from the very beginning that, like Kevin said, it's not about party. I'm equal opportunist, because I came into this very green, knowing nothing about politics or any of you guys. And I think I've told Shoop, I've told you guys probably both at different times, I don't trust any of you until you give me a reason to.
Yep.
So, who would have thought a land use attorney, like all of these people, as you start digging in, you see these common names popping up on all these different things. My whack-a-mole that got me involved in all this is because I have 5 kids in the Appoquinimink School District. And I grew up in the same schools my kids are walking in, I went to. And so I've very much seen the degradation, especially since COVID. And then we fail an audit. And I see Kevin, that was when I think I first learned about who Kevin was, because he was the only person calling for accountability.
Yep.
So I look and, Forston is a Republican. He's counsel for the Delaware Republican Party. But at the same time, he's been in that role for a long time. And if you look up his land use attorney's office, they've literally doubled in state revenue since he's joined the board, and they've grown in partners, and they were just awarded top lawyers a couple weeks ago. And everything's connected. We haven't touched on the Reading Consortium, all the school stuff. We'll talk on that another time, but it's connected there as well, where, there's a fancy dinner last year and Forston happens to get award of idea of the night for one school district for Wilmington. Mm-hmm. Forston was also at a tax assessment secret panel at DuPont Country Club. So when you see the same people popping up, you see how much they're benefiting from different things. It's not rocket science. It's the scandal board, right? It's, this person's here, this person's here. And then you really see who's benefiting in the state and who's not. And it's the kids and the teachers that they use as pawns. Sorry.
No, you keep going, girl. I'm just you're spot on. You're spot on. And by the way, Shannon has the receipts for everything she just says. The meeting at DuPont Country Club, the award. There's everything that she is saying.
It's all public.
It's public information. You just have to know about it to find it. That's all it is. I would love to give Kevin some time to talk about anything he may want to talk about that we haven't covered yet. In the interim, if you are watching us live, thank you so much for being here for the hard launch of Reclaim Ground Media. As you can see, we have some amazing content creators. We have had a fabulous first guest on our show. Kevin, thank you so much for being here. And if you have any questions for anybody on the panel tonight, please drop them on the live chat, and we will be sure to get them answered to the appropriate person. While you guys are commenting any questions you may have or anything you may just want to talk about, Kevin, I do have one more question for you. And actually, Greg, if we could bring up Michael, Pastor Mike, for this one too, I think he might have something, some input on this one. One thing I noticed when I was watching the county council meeting, just the other night, the county council president opened with a prayer. And I thought that was lovely. And I was so shocked to hear the pushback on that, or I should say maybe the response to that. Can you tell us about maybe who that was, what it was about? Can you just debrief anybody who maybe just didn't even see it at all?
Yeah, no, very fair question. What happened is we usually do basically a moment of silence, and so we never had an opening prayer before, and so there were some people that were thrown off by it. Let's just say, but as our Constitution and Supreme Court cases have said, their opening prayers are absolutely allowable in the legislative bodies, and I fully support them as long as we move forward. The only thing the Supreme Court says is they have to be non-secular, right? So you do a Christian one, and then you'll do a Muslim one, or you do a Jewish one, or whatever it does as you rotate. But I think it was more because we never did a prayer, to be honest with you. I only been here for a year, so I don't know what they did prior, but it was the first time we ever did a prayer, to be honest. Yeah.
And can you tell us who was pushing back on that a little bit?
I heard some people say some things, but I don't know what else was stated on that.
Okay. All right. We do have some questions here. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I know that was your question. That was one of the things you really wanted answered.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that in the news report. I thought, what in the world is controversial about asking for heavenly wisdom as you make decisions that impact all of us? And so I appreciate the answer, and I hope that the council continues to pray before meetings. I think that's a really wise thing to do, and maybe it would help settle the issues that we're seeing where it seems okay to openly mock and talk down to each other and to your constituents. From a pastoral perspective, the scriptures have a lot to say about people who mock each other. Like, don't hang out with them, don't be with them. There's no blessing that comes from that. So we're for a pause on that sort of behavior. And even if you guys don't continue to pray, just know you have a whole bunch of people who are praying for you to have heavenly wisdom as you make these decisions.
That's very true. Thank you, Pastor Mike. And if I could bring up, it's interesting to see, and when we started to launch this company or talk about launching this company, I guess because I'm an elected official as well, the only content creator here that is, people pushed back and said, well, what about separation of church and state? And, I just wanted to, and I informed them that, the separation of church and state actually is not inside the Constitution. If you go and read your Constitution, it's not there. What the Constitution does is actually protect people from the government trying to tell them how they can worship, how they can express their religion. And so to have prayer at the beginning of any governmental body is not against the Constitution. It does not show up, and there is not a separation of church and state within that. So, I understand that there's different beliefs. There's people that don't believe in God, but it is not against some. And this is where we start to reclaim ground, right? We tell people and show them actually what the Constitution says and what it doesn't say. And things have been tribal knowledge over the years, and people just say, oh, separation of church and state, separation of church and state, but they don't actually read the founding documents and what is actually in there.
That's a great
Brian,
point.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
You're good.
Fun fact that whole phrase, separation of church and state, came from a letter that a group of Christians called the Danbury Baptists in Connecticut wrote to then President Thomas Jefferson. And their concern was that because they were a smaller number of Christians, there was a larger church group, another set of Christians, who they were really just concerned that other denomination was going to get more influence politically than what they had. And they just wanted some assurances that the other church wasn't going to get more political influence than what they had. And that was where Thomas Jefferson said, no, there's a wall of separation between the church and state. In other words, we're not going to prefer one over the other. That's where that language came from. Also, fun fact for the history nerds, Delaware, like all of the original 13 colonies, but was one of the ones who, in its original constitution, you couldn't even be elected to office without affirming a belief in divinity and the Trinity. And so, like, you couldn't even run. You couldn't even have a spot in the office. So again, the idea of separation of church and state, kind of a myth that people love to throw around, but if you go back to our roots and our history, the connection to faith has always been there.
You guys see why we have him on the panel? Do you guys see why we have Pastor Mike? Because he's a wealth of knowledge. That was awesome. I knew none of that about Delaware. That was amazing. Some of the questions we're getting in the chat real quick. A lot of people have, Kevin, I guess this one would be kind of aimed to you a little bit. A lot of people have been commenting on possibly solar fields to generate the data center power, but our wonderful producer, where I don't know how he does what he does, and he can be doing this and doing this at the same time, but he kind of disproved the fact that they would work. He said the total footprint that would take up solar panels would be 24,000 to 33,000 acres. Batteries would be over 1,000 acres. Substations, roads, spacing, lots of numbers. Greg, how did you do this so quick? About 39,000 acres total, which is about twice the size of Manhattan, just to power a 1.2 gigawatt data center entirely on solar and storage. Kevin, has anything else been discussed to or proposed to power this data center that would relieve some of the strain on the PJM grid? You're shaking your head. This is going to be bad.
No, absolutely not. I mean, and the solar panel argument is completely debunked. And Greg already gave you what we need to talk about that. And so there's no assurances that they're not going to not suck off the grid and all our power bills will go up. Not one piece of evidence yet raised by those who have submitted the plan.
There has to be a solution out there. There has to be. I know somebody brought up in this as well, nuclear power. Do you have any input or take on that at all? Is that something you want to discuss at all? There's
been some discussions about southern New Jersey possibly putting another nuclear plant up. But I'm not a New Jerseyan, so I can't fully speak about what may happen or what may not happen there. But right now, no, we can't depend on, empty promises right now. And I'll tell you, I don't know, and Brian probably can tell us, where else do we put a nuclear power plant in Delaware?
Well, that's a great question. There is a look into what is, I think, referred to as kind of the mini nuclear that is, generations, kind of like the next generation of nuclear is supposed to be a lot smaller. There has been a study to look into potentially ramping up the former Indian River power plant, but a lot of that, actually the infrastructure that was in there was taken out. So it would be much like just building a whole nother plant over again. I know a lot of people do ask about that. And it's, at the end of the day, you got to take into effect, people talk about this data center and the negative effects, environmental effects it could have on the water and the air, and you've got to put that into the account. You've got to put that into the equation when you talk about nuclear as well. The disastrous things that can happen to the environment while it's there, or if something goes wrong. So yes, it does generate a lot of power, but just like you, Kevin, I'd like to know every single thing about it before we're willing to commit to it.
I'm so glad to have two logical lawmakers in this state that want to hear everything. They don't really form their opinion about it until they do hear everything. That's actually very reassuring. Shannon, this one is, I think, kind of to you. It's more of a statement than a question. Somebody says, we still don't have accountability in APO, which is something I know you feel too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's any lawmakers that could help with that, but no, I think it's tough, right? Like it's touching on the school stuff. And Katie, anytime we post anything about the schools, we get, people aren't happy about it because we put our kids in these schools and you have the people, oh, just take them out, put them in. That's not the solution. Public schools have been there. I'm a product of public school. It is what it is. So how do we fix it? And then you start going back in time. What changed? What are some of the different things that are impacting or have had negative impacts? And you see curriculum changes. You see a lot of things since COVID, a lot of initiatives, billions of dollars poured into the schools over the course of the last 3 to 4 years. And we're not seeing any marked improvement. You're seeing consortiums, you're seeing task force, you're seeing all of these things put together with no measurable metrics, nothing to say, hey, how do we know that this was successful? This entire tax assessment, Kevin, you deal with council member Jay Street, and I know that he is a pillar in the community. But at the same time, this person has cost us millions in litigation through the years to fund low-income schools that are not receiving the funds that we're litigating to get. So we have to, again, follow the money, follow the timelines, understand how we got here. And when it comes to APO, most parents don't know we had an exodus. A lot of the teachers have left or retired because they refuse to teach the curriculum. My daughter's teacher is not credentialed. There are a lot of teachers in APO right now that are uncredentialed. And so are they getting paid right? Are we throwing paras and admins into these teacher roles at their rate and not paying them a fair wage? Like these are all the questions that are being asked. We have a failed audit with no recourse while the auditor's office is asking for more auditors. Mm-hmm. So there's something missing here when it comes to oversight. And where does the buck stop?
And if I could comment on that real quick, I was the original guy that called for this audit, yeah. And let me just say something very clearly. It's a shame that Mr. Forston has not resigned. Mm-hmm. It's a shame that Dr. Burris has not resigned. But Mr. Forston is up for election come the school board election in May of this year. So I will just say we'll handle it that way. And if Mr. Forston actually files for re-election, which we don't know if he's going to do, well, if we want accountability, we cannot vote for that man.
Yeah. So, Kevin, thank you very much for those words. I think we only have a few minutes left, but I do want to come back real quick to the data center and moving steps forward. Has there been any talks about making, and that's not the right word, but I guess regulating the company to have to not only produce their own power, but to produce power and build power that would generate electricity for Newcastle County and individuals in Delaware? We're already one of the reasons why we continue to have exponentially energy prices rise in Delaware is because we don't generate enough electricity here. We get most of our power from out of state, from Virginia, from Ohio. If this thing looks like it's going to happen, is there a way to force this company to not only generate power for themselves, but have to generate extra power in order to help out if this is going to happen?
So we are limited. They're limited on how much energy they can produce due to the Coastal Zone Act. So actually, we have talked to legislators, and we need to talk to you too, Brian, as well, about, I think the Public Service Commission has to make some regulations changes about how much power they can generate or not generate. I think Frank Burns has some legislation moving forward. Reach out to him. Again, this is not a Democrat-Republican issue, right? This is just a common sense issue, and about how we make sure that they can't not commit to generating so much power. And what we understand right now is the county is limited, and actually it's more state law that has to deal with how that power gets generated and how much it gets generated.
Yeah. I mean, my first thought about this was, hey, if it can't be, if for some reason, first of all, I would love for it, and this is just my personal opinion. So, but I would love for it to not happen because of not only the rising energy costs, but the environmental impact. If it does happen, someone needs to step in, even at the governor's office, to say, here's the deal. It needs to generate not only enough electricity and power for its own business, but we also need X amount to go back onto our grid because we don't have enough generation here in Delaware. And if we're going to make a deal, we're going to make the deal in our favor for our people.
And I tend to agree with you, Brian. And here's the thing: as a Democratic councilman, you're a Republican state representative. Yeah. We can get this done if we work together and collaborate and talk about this and make sure that we get it over the. Make sure we deal with these things. So it's really, really important.
Look at our lawmakers here reclaiming ground for common sense. You guys, that's such a good thing to see. And everybody in the comments is saying the same exact thing. And while you're talking about energy, somebody asked, what's the latest on offshore wind? Seems like that has come silent ever since the Maryland and Delaware AGs have come together to go to court. Do you guys know anything about that?
There is a lot of back and forth in the courts right now. I believe the last that I heard, and I know somebody's going to correct me online because I don't have the latest information, but I believe that the federal administration has gotten the final word now to basically not move forward with it. There was a lot of lawsuits back and forth. The administration wanted to pull it back. Then the AG's office sued against that. And now I believe that the federal administration has kind of won that battle, which is good for the residents of Sussex County. That said, we don't want this for the environmental reasons, for the power that was actually going to be bid in and sold to people in Maryland. That's what the contract called for. And the Sussex County Council, who voted against it, if you remember, it came to the legislative body in Dover. And going back to what our first part of our conversation on data center is they retroactively put a bill in place that was retroactive to that specific property and got it passed in that way. So I think most of the residents, and of course some are not happy, but most of the residents in Sussex County are happy. Definitely the individuals on council are happy because their wishes their votes that were representing the people in Sussex County were upheld as well.
That same person that asked that question said that's good for the entire shore if that's true. Mm-hmm. I think we have time for one more question. This is kind of an open-ended one, but Matt would like to know, why did these commissions have so much power?
I don't know if that's a question for me, but
I'm not sure. I think anybody who can speak on the why.
That is the one thing that we see not only on a state level, but also on a federal level, that there are not only commissions, but there is also regulations from departments that seem to have a lot more power and weight, even more than legislators themselves. And that is a problem. And I'll just give you a few examples. When DNREC steps in and says that they want to have an EV mandate where, car companies have to buy so much of their inventory has to be EV by a certain date. And that regulation is done without going through the legislature, without people being able to go to their representative or their senator and say, yes, I would like that. I don't like that. And they basically went against the free market system that we've lived by since the beginning of this country. But it's something that we are trying to push back against and say, hey, commissions and departments shouldn't have this so much power because you can't get to them. Yes, they can have an open period where public comment can happen, but it's not the same as having someone like Kevin that you can go to and say, hey, can I sit down with you? Here's my real concerns. Can I tell you from my perspective and my family's perspective, and urge them to vote the way that you want them to vote because you elected them? That is a completely different representative republic than just a commission or a department just voting for what is in the best interest of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a good point, Brian. That's a really good point. Does any of our other panel members, Kevin, do you have anything to say as we close out? There's still questions rolling in. I don't think we have time for many more questions. People are asking who's funding the data center. How is it even proposed with not even enough energy for residents? We're having to outsource a lot of our energy. And it seems like the overall tone is people are appreciative that we sat down and had these conversations, and are appreciative to you, Kevin, and you, Brian, for finding some common ground and having these common sense debates and conversations and dialogue to try to bring transparency above anything else to our residents here in Delaware.
Yeah, I would say one last action item is for everyone who's listening, or we're actually going live on multiple platforms, multiple Facebook pages. In the future, we will be on also multiple YouTubes, and everyone that's a content creator is actually sharing this live on their Facebook page, which is really neat from this platform. So leave in the comments, even after we're done with this live, leave in the comments things that you want us to touch on, whether it's the schools, whether it's something to deal with local churches, if it's something to help or deal with situations that our youth are going through, if it's something to deal with substance abuse, whatever it may be, leave it in the comments, because we want to do more shows like this, and we want to do them constantly. We want to do them weekly. So we want to have people on, talk with people. We want to have some of you on, even if you don't feel like you're an expert. If you have a real lived experience, we want to talk with you. We want to talk about what's going on in the lives of Delawareans that are living the impacts of what's going on, the challenges that are going on every day.
Absolutely. And while this particular podcast was a little bit heavy on the political side because of our special guest, Kevin Caneco, joining us tonight, we had a lot of questions for him. Our podcast will span a great deal of topics, and there will be times where there's probably more than one a week. As Shannon gets stories that she is onto and she is ready to present, we want to have her on here, getting all that information out to you guys, especially as we approach the holiday times. I think conversations, especially with Pastor Mike and Isaiah, are going to be so important too, because I know I personally have a lot of questions I'd like to ask you around holiday traditions and how to navigate the holidays. And another thing that we didn't really get to touch on too much here tonight, which kind of crosses over to the politics and just lifestyle, is having Kevin O'Brien come on here and really talk about the permit to purchase, which is another thing that has gone into effect. Today's the 20th, 21st. I guess it went into effect last week, but is certainly already having some issues. So these are all things that we are going to talk about and have shows on. And we would love to have you guys all tune in for all of those. Isaiah, Kevin, do you have anything to say before we sign off? Do you have anything you want to comment on about this conversation or add, or any other final questions for Kevin Caneco? No, we're good. All right, awesome. Well, Brian, anything else you want to say? I was super nervous about tonight. I was nervous about my backdrop. I think tonight went pretty well.
I think it went amazing. And thank you again to our great friend, Greg Bolden, who made this live stream possible with all of us on here. I do want to say one other thing. Reclaimed Ground Media is a startup. It's for you. It's by you. If you see the little scroll at the bottom, tinyurl.com/RGM support. This is a company that's going to be crowdfunded through Delaware. We're not going to be, as we talked about in the beginning, we're not taking corporate narratives. So we're not going to be taking money from huge corporations. We're not going to be digging into huge dark money, as they call it in politics. We really want it to be something from the ground up. We want it to worship the kingdom. 10% of everything in the name of tithing is going to go back to kingdom giving as well. And we hope to, over time, have more than 10% going to kingdom giving to push out into Delaware communities to help people. And, even $5 would help support us to buy a cup of coffee for somebody to have a conversation about what's going on in their community and be able to bring it to you live on one of these events. So anything will be greatly appreciated. It doesn't have to be now. Pray over it. See if God puts something on your heart. If he doesn't, that's completely fine. Keep tuning in. We would love to have you. Go to our Facebook page and give us a like, share us. If God does put something on your heart, we would love to talk with you And we just want to reclaim ground for everything here in Delaware. We want to share your story, not have political spins, not national narratives, not corporate media out there. We want to talk with you, and we want to know what's important in your life.
Absolutely. Real quick, somebody says permit to purchase is hands down the number one topic that needs to be talked about right now. Brian, maybe we can talk to your friends at DSSA. Maybe we can schedule something for maybe a Sunday or a Monday to get on
Absolutely.
top of that. That same person also said that they would love to sit down and talk about that CR land deal you went on a rant about. Can we make that happen? I think we could probably convince him to, at the very minimum, do a video about that tomorrow or the next day. Schools, the reassessment, did nothing for the seniors, data center, our Second Amendment. Thanks for having the people on who make sense. Overwhelming support. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Shannon, Kevin, Isaiah, Pastor Mike, Kevin, thank you all so much for joining me and Brian tonight. This was a really successful first live, and I am looking forward to way more of these too.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing all your love with us. Thank you.
Greg, I don't know how to get out of here, so this is where you come in, buddy. Take us away.
Reclaim ground media, we're taking back the sound, lifting up the truth until the walls come down. Voices for the kingdom, hope in every town. This is where the lost get found. On